Pirates I can reject everything 1 to 20. 001. Shen Luo Tianzheng. Roar tilde tilde. Tigers roared, elephants trotted heavily, and other beasts of all kinds. They all fled from the depths of the island to the outside. There seems to be something terrifying in it. Not long after, a figure stepped out. 183 in height, 19 years old and very handsome. In the year 1519 of the Haiyuan calendar, it's time to go to sea. In the previous life, his parents died, and he rented a small house to write fan fiction novels of one piece. During a lunch break one day, when I woke up, I crossed to this island. There was also a devil fruit beside him. He named himself Chris. At this time, he jumped into the air and floated quietly, overlooking the island. It took 14 years of hard work. Chris's thoughts raced, thinking of his experiences on the island. At the age of 5, I crossed over, ate the fruit of rejection, and worked hard to cultivate every day. Now, I have to leave and let my name spread all over the sea. Chris slowly opened his arms, his eyes turned cold, and he let out a low drink. Shen Luo Tianzheng. A white circle of light appeared and spread out instantly. The whole space became brighter. Rumbling tilde. The island continued to vibrate, the whining of animals, one after another. Gradually, the light faded away. Below, the island disappeared, and a bowl-shaped sea surface appeared. Soon, seawater poured in and filled the gap. The first goal is to find Baccarat, the goddess of luck. This woman's strength is average, but her fruit ability is sky-high. It plays a vital role in your future plans. Absolutely not to lose. Exclusive space. Chris didn't hesitate, and with a flash, he disappeared in place and went to the South China Sea. In his previous life, he was a pirate fan and knew that Baccarat was born in a small town in the South China Sea. Having said that, rejecting the fruit is really too powerful. Chris took advantage of its properties and developed a lot of skills. The Shen Luo Tianzheng that can bounce back everything, the exclusionary space that can constantly travel. One day later. South China Sea, Nausicaa town. At the port, there is a large ship parked, with many workers on it, busy. Sister Baccarat, there are at most 3 days before our pirate ship can be completed. I really want to go to sea early to find treasures. Anyway, with Sister Baccarat, we can definitely live a good life, ha ha ha. The sea is the place where men should go. I have long wanted to go to the sea, tilde tilde. Baccarat waved his hand and reprimanded in annoyance. How many times have I said it? It can't be me who is at the helm of this ship. We are not strong enough and need to rely on the strong, so I let everyone out to sea to find the true owner of this ship. Baccarat shook his head gently and said with emotion, sailing on the sea without enough strength is equivalent to self-destruction. At this moment, a faint voice came from the air. Looking for the strong. I don't know if I have that kind of strength. My goddess of luck Baccarat. Shock. All the people on the boat were startled and looked up quickly. I saw a young man standing above the mast. He was wearing black clothes and black pants, with his hands wrapped around him, with an indifferent look on his face. The body is faintly exuding bursts of domineering. Who are you and why did you appear? Before his subordinates finished speaking, Baccarat interrupted. Quiet. These people were very convinced of Baccarat, they turned to look at Baccarat one by one, and fell silent. Baccarat ignored their gaze and bowed slightly towards the direction of the mast. With a smile on her face, she said with joy, Captain, Baccarat has been waiting for you for a long time. Welcome. After Chris appeared, her intuition told herself. This young man is the powerhouse he has been waiting for. Needless to say, Baccarat trusts her instincts. Because, Lucky Fruit has never been wrong. What? He's our captain. How is that possible? Miss Baccarat, you're kidding, don't make fun of us, okay? Little bastards, who is Miss Baccarat, how could she possibly go wrong? Who dares to question again? I will be the first to deal with him. Yes, although the captain is young, he must be a strong man, he. We have a captain, hooray tilde. Chris still put his arms around him, expressionless, still so calm and rational. Strong and domineering as always. With this result, he was already prepared in his heart and would not feel excited at all. Baccarat's fruit ability can definitely tell that he is a strong man. As long as she is not a stupid person, she naturally knows how to choose. At this point, the first goal has been achieved. Next, open the second goal, continuously recruit subordinates, and expand your own power. These, before going to sea, Chris had already made plans in advance. 002. Bassos and Poison Q. 2 days later. At the port of Nausicaa town. Way ha 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 ha. Bassos looked at the big ship in front of him, raised his arms, laughed and said, Poison Q, we finally found the big ship and robbed it. Poison Q was lying on top of Stallone, looking like he was terminally ill and dying. Bosses, I am weak and sick. So, I'll leave it to you. When he spoke, he was intermittent and weak, as if he was about to die. Okay, just wait here. Bassos laughed and strode forward. When he came to the shore, he looked at the workers on the boat and shouted. Listen to the people on the boat, I want this boat, and I want to get it down quickly. When the workers heard the sound, they stopped one by one and looked down. They were about to scold, but there was a voice in front of them. You can also give this ship to you, beat me. Chris walked over slowly and said calmly, but if you lose, then be my subordinate. After he finished speaking, he also glanced at the poisonous Q on the side, and sure enough, he looked like a TB. 2 days ago, Chris and Baccarat mentioned the next plan. Now that Bassos and Poison Q appear, it just confirms the ability of Lucky Fruit. It can really bring you good luck. Captain, this guy is too arrogant, beat him up. Boss Chris, you are the strongest, come on. What kind of rubbish, dare to provoke our captain, it's too long for life. Brothers, there is a good show to watch, come out soon. Basharston became interested at the time. He likes fighting the most, so how could he refuse Chris's request? Boy, your ship, I bosses took it. Fall for Lao Su, way ha 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 tilde. As soon as the voice fell, the person was like an arrow from the string, and went directly to Chris. The big fist of the sandbag has already been clenched, and his face is full of madness. Before Chris put his arms around him, he first glanced at Bassos, then turned to look at Poison Q. Very calmly said, you two are optimistic, now I want to teach you a kind of power, only the strong can have the ability. That's domineering. As soon as he finished speaking, Bash's big fist came towards him. Stop lecturing us and lie down for Lao Su. Chris said lightly, you'll hit from my left. As soon as he finished speaking, he tilted his head slightly to the right. What? Bashas exclaimed, a look of shock on his face. His punch was actually empty. How is this going? How did this guy dodge? A series of questions appeared in his mind. Not only him, but even the poisonous Q on the side showed a shocked expression. How powerful Bassos is, he is very clear. But it turned out to be like this. It's unbelievable. Chris ignored the shock of the two of them, and said a calm voice. The power of making people feel the other person's breath more strongly, this is the domineering power of seeing and hearing. Bassos did not believe in evil, and roared. I don't believe I can't hit you. The fist, like rain, kept waving towards Chris. The speed is extremely fast, and it is extremely ferocious. If it is hit, it will definitely be finished. By increasing this power, you can perceive the location and number of enemies who are not in sight, and even the actions the opponent will take in the next instant. Chris was still clasping his hands in front of him, or bowing his head, or turning sideways, making constant adjustments. Wandering around in the courtyard, it was like playing home. As far as I know, in some places, this is also called Zengang. Although it is called differently, the meaning is the same. Looking at the scene in front of him, everyone around was shocked. All of them stared blankly. What's going on? It's terrible. Does the captain have 3 eyes, or how did he do it? What 3 eyes? Didn't you hear what Captain Chris said? This is called domineering. Hey, what do you call domineering? Knowing is domineering, Boss Chris said so. Too strong, Captain. My little brother really admires you so much. Baccarat stood quietly on the side, her beautiful eyes were full of brilliance, and there was only the stalwart figure in her eyes. Sure enough, her intuition was the most correct. The person I have been looking forward to is Chris. Poison Q could no longer lie down, so he sat up, with a look of horror on his vicissitudes of life. Knowing and domineering. He thought hard, but he had never heard the word before, and he had no idea that such power existed in the world. At this moment, Bossos roared loudly. Why is that so? He has stopped attacking. He can't hit the young man in front of him at all, so what's the point of throwing a punch? Depressed. Angry to the extreme. He wanted to know what was going on. What I just said was the domineering arrogance of seeing and hearing, and now I mention another kind of domineering. Chris raised his right hand and instantly turned pitch black, sparkling. Spoiler ahead of time. Since both Bashes and Poison Q have appeared, then Lafitte and Van Oka will definitely not forget. The people on the original Blackbeard ship will appear by Chris. Big bosses, do you like these crew members? Asterisk. 003. Captain Battle. This is armed domineering. It's like wearing an invisible armor, very solid, ordinary strength, can't break through this defense at all. Chris said with a faint smile, although your fists are very strong and their attack power is very fierce, they are all appearances. Enough. Bashes threw a punch in anger and said something vicious. Don't hide if you have one, I'll see if I won't kill you. As you wish. Facing the big fist of Bash's sandbag, Chris just punched lightly. Boom with him. Bang. After a blast, there was a scream. Ah. Bossos was knocked out, fell to the ground, and kept rolling back. Quiet. It was quiet all around. A pair of eyes gathered on Chris. Worship, adore. Treat Chris like a god. Follow me, and one day you will master this power. Chris put his arms around him and said with a cold face, I won't say more nonsense, just follow if you want to become stronger. After he finished speaking, he led Baccarat and walked directly to the big ship. Way ha 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 ha. Bashes stood up, ignoring the pain in his hand, and laughed. I don't want to miss such a powerful force. Immediately afterwards, he glanced at Poison Q and said quickly, would you like to follow up, make your own decision. Ignoring Poison Q, he quickly followed behind Chris, his face full of excitement. He is a fighting maniac, and most admires the strong. Chris beat him, only to convince him, willing to obey Chris's arrangement. Nothing will be said. Cough. Wait for me. Poison Q patted Stallone, and the sick horse carried him forward step by step with heavy steps. Horses, like people, are like candles in the wind that can go out at any moment. It looks really weird. Soon, everyone was on the boat. Ship rules, the strong are respected. As soon as he got on the boat, Bossos saw the lettering on the mast. Captain, what do these rules mean? Chris put his hands in his trouser pockets and said lightly, this ship has only one rule. Speak with strength. Chris looked at the two of them with a casual expression, as long as your fists are harder than mine, then you are the boss of this ship. So, if you want to be a captain, then practice hard. I'm waiting for you to challenge. Before going to sea, he had already thought about it all. So, yesterday he engraved this line of words on the mast with his own hands. In this way, to inspire everyone on board. Keep everyone in the fighting spirit. The weak are destined to be eliminated. Captain, you're so angry with me, way ha ha ha. Bossos is very happy, such a pirate group is exactly what he has always longed for. He is a pirate. If he makes a lot of rules, what kind of pirate is he? Might as well go home and farm. Everything is about strength. This is the best rule. Such a captain. I like. Smile appeared on Poison Q's face, but it looked uglier than crying. At this time, Chris looked at those subordinates and roared. Little ones, set sail, set off. Yes, Captain Chris. As soon as the voice fell, a pirate flag fluttered. A white skull with 2 knives crossed at the back, the handle on the left reads, Power, and the one on the right reads, Wealth. It was designed by Chris himself. What it means, anyone with a discerning eye can see it. Bossos was not interested at all about the pirate flag. He looked at Chris and asked questions with a smile. Boss, since there is a captain battle, then there must be a squad captain battle, too. Chris nodded and said with a blank face, when there are more members, find a place to fight and determine the order of the squad leaders. You two cultivate hard, don't even be the captain of the squad by then. After he finished speaking, he ignored them and walked directly to the training room. For him, improving his strength is the most important thing, and even a minute will not be wasted. Typical desperate Saburo. Bakura had nothing to do, so she followed behind Chris, planning to see him practice. She does this a lot these days. I find it very interesting. Poison Q, we have to work hard, the captain of the first team belongs to me. Bashes clenched his fists and said loudly, who dares to take this position from Lao Su and kill him? Poison Q coughed, with a weird smile on his face. Why, you don't want to be captain anymore. Bashes glared at him and said dissatisfiedly, do you want me to go to death, bastard? The captain, at first glance, is a ruthless character. If I go to challenge him, I'm afraid I'll be killed if I lose. Bashes punched together and laughed loudly, I won't be involved in the captain battle anymore. As for the battle of the squad leader, I must participate, way ha ha ha. Addition rules. Let's play a game. Ladies and gentlemen. A reward, add another chapter. 1,000 flowers, add another chapter. 300 evaluation votes, add another chapter. 20 comments, plus 1 more chapter. Big guys, as long as you dare to play, the author will accompany you to the end. Some kind of horse come over. Let me tell you secretly that the author has more manuscripts than you can imagine. This book, the author has been writing for more than a month, you don't have to worry about the manuscript. Well, the author will stare at the background data, as long as there are enough flowers to reward, it will explode immediately. Come on, let me see your enthusiasm. Flower evaluation tickets, as well as rewards, let's go. 004. Inspiring Fruit Ability, Betty. 3 days later. South Sea, Victor Town. At this time, at the port, a large ship slowly docked. I finally found the island, I'm going to eat a big meal, way ha 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 ha. Bossos raised his arms and laughed. Poison Q glanced at the direction of the training room, and said intermittently, the captain is really desperate. Cough, he is practicing all day long. The captain is under a lot of pressure. Bashes shrugged his shoulders and said loudly, if you don't work hard to become stronger, one day the captain will be replaced. Just then, the sound of footsteps came. Children, go to town and relax. Originally, Chris planned to continue to practice and ignore the outside world. But Bakura said that she felt good luck. And the place is on this island. This time, Chris became interested and walked out of the training room without saying a word. Oye, long live Captain Chris tilde tilde. The cheers were loud and everyone was very happy. Bossos looked at Chris, laughed and said, Captain, I thought you would continue to practice, but I didn't expect you to come out. Captain should have something to deal with. Poison Q was lying on the deck, his head turned sideways, and his smile was very strange. This town will bring us good luck. As soon as Chris' voice fell, the man jumped under the boat and moved quickly. It seems that there is a new partner to join, way ha 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 ha. Bassos mentioned Poison Q and Stallone and jumped directly under the boat. A few days ago, after learning about Baccarat's ability, the two of them were very shocked. More confidence in the future of this ship. There is a very powerful captain, and such a lucky ability against the sky. The future is bright. Victor Town, a small square on the east side. Hand over the money, or I will kill you. We only need money. If you are obedient, we will spare your life. Two middle-aged men in their 30s, holding knives, threatened a young man in front of them. This is robbery. I give you, please forgive me. The young man trembled and was about to put money into his pocket. At this time, a voice came. You rubbish, how can you be so cowardly? The three quickly looked over. I saw a tall woman in a red dress walking slowly from a distance. She wore sunglasses, a cigarette in her mouth, and a large flag. It's Betty. Where's the temptress? Get out of here. Brother, we stole the money, let's go. As for the young man, he stared blankly at Betty. You rubbish, is this talking to yourself? At this time, Betty came forward and stopped. She exhaled the smoke from her mouth and looked extremely arrogant. Two robbers, you are acting like a bedbug, and you are not a man anymore. Rise and resist, you lowly weakling. After speaking, the banner waved at the young man, and a white wind blew past. Be the master of your own destiny and stop being so stupid. With another wave, another white wind blew past. This young man, blown by the breeze, instantly brightened his eyes. He clenched his fists, his face was serious, and he said confidently, it is absolutely impossible for me to hand over my money. He was very weak just now, but now he is extremely strong. The reaction before and after was so great that the two robbers were a little confused. What's going on here? Before they could react, a figure quickly jumped over. Bang bang tilde tilde. Ah! Two screams sounded, fell to the ground and fainted. At this time, young people know what they have done. How did I become so great? It must be her. He quickly turned his head to look, but there was still the figure of that mysterious woman. It has already disappeared. Betty passed under a tree with a cigarette in her mouth, and she was about to leave the town. Suddenly, a voice came from above. Very good ability. Are you interested? Follow me to change the world. Startled, Betty looked up quickly. This is a young man, standing on a tree trunk. He was dressed in black, with his hands in his trouser pockets, looking calm and calm. It looks very mysterious. It seems that the scene just now has been seen by you. Betty spit out the smoke in her mouth and said lightly, what do you mean by changing the world? Call out. Chris' figure flashed and appeared in front of her instantly. This time, Betty was really shocked. What a great speed. It was completely unclear how he moved. If he wants to kill himself, then. Betty dripped cold sweat on her forehead and was really frightened. This world is so unfair. The Tianlong people at the top will only exploit the people and make the people at the bottom live extremely miserable. Chris looked at Betty with firm eyes and said word by word, how can such a rubbish world keep going? Follow me, to overthrow the rule of the Tianlong people. Let this world become a free country. Ladies and gentlemen, the above is the picture of Betty. This fruit is very powerful and will play a big role in the future, so it is necessary for her to become a squad leader. *005. This is a mysterious island. There is a reward, add another chapter. Have you heard? Kong Shun almost had an accident yesterday. I haven't heard of it, what's wrong? I know that. His fleet strayed into the Devil's Land and was almost attacked by the Sea Kings. It's that island again. It seems that I really can't pass through there in the future. Who said it wasn't? Baccarat carried some cosmetics, and just returned to the port. He heard the conversation of passers-by. In an instant, a flash of light flashed in her mind, and she hurriedly stepped forward to ask. Excuse me, where is the island you're talking about? These passers-by stopped talking. Some ignored Baccarat and left directly. Finally, a middle-aged man pointed to the northwest and said patiently, "The boat will go there, and it will be there in half a day. It's dangerous there, there's a lot of sea kings, you'd better not go to that place." After he finished speaking, he ignored Baccarat, followed in the footsteps of his companions and left quickly. Baccarat looked out and saw the blue sea in the northwest, and there was no shadow of the island at all. "Speak to Chris later, there's a new adventure." Baccarat didn't stop any longer and walked directly to the boat. Above Chris. "Captain, this time partner, why is it a woman?" Bassos looked at the red-clad beauty in front of him, shrugged his shoulders, and looked a little uninterested. Poison Q was still lying on the ground, lingering on and saying, "Since the captain chose her, there must be something different." Chris leaned against the railing, ignoring the words of the two of them, and introduced himself. "She's our new partner, the superhuman fruit inspiration, Betty." Betty looked at Poison Q, took a breath and said, "What's the matter with this guy? It looks like he's dying of illness." "Welcome new partners." Baccarat walked slowly with graceful steps, smiled and said, "With your participation, I won't be so boring in the future." Betty glanced at this noble and dignified woman, exhaling the smoke from her mouth, with a cold look on her face. "You are the one who ate the lucky fruit, Baccarat, right?" On the way back, she was really shocked to hear Chris mention Baccarat's abilities. There is such a magical devil fruit in this world. Incredible. At this time, Chris said aloud, "Little ones, count the number of people. Get ready, set sail." "Yes, Captain Chris." The whole crew started to get busy. Anchoring, sailing. Baccarat looked at Chris, stroked his crimson hair, and said with a gentle smile, "Chris, let's head northwest first." "Have you found anything, Miss Baccarat?" Bassos immediately became interested and hurriedly asked. Chris didn't speak, just looked at Baccarat quietly, waiting for her to answer. "I heard the conversation of passers-by just now. Near an island in the northwest, there have always been sea kings. My gut tells me that there will be good luck for us there." Baccarat's smile is gentle and generous, and her expression is very indifferent. There's no such thing as an invitation. Chris is a decisive man, with a loud roar from his instincts. "Young Fan, head northwest." Received. The big ship adjusted its direction and quickly set off towards the destination. Bashes raised his arms high, laughed wildly and said, "There will be something amazing on that island, way ha ha ha. I am looking forward to it." Cough cough tilde tilde. Do Q's vicissitudes of life showed a rare look of excitement. Bailey leaned back on the chair, crossed Erlang's legs, spit out the smoke from his mouth, and said something lightly. "I didn't expect that. I just got on the boat and encountered such an interesting thing, not bad. I went to practice, and something called me." After Chris finished speaking, he went directly to the training room. Baccarat looked at Betty and said with a smile, "Betty, let's go see Chris practice." "Okay, just to get to know our captain." Then, the two chatted and laughed and followed Chris. Bashes shook his head and sighed with emotion. "The captain's talent is amazing, and it's really scary to practice so hard." Poison Q coughed and said, "The captain has a big goal. I'm looking forward to the future of this ship more and more." 6 hours later. Report. A siren sounded from the observation deck at a high volume. "Island found ahead, found ahead." Repeated several times in a row. "Have you arrived at your destination, way ha ha ha." Bassos strode to the railing, raised his arms, and said with great joy. Poison Q sat on the chair and said slowly, "It's probably not a new partner joining, I'm afraid it's a devil fruit." At this moment, footsteps came, and Chris's voice sounded at the same time. "Whatever it is, just go up and see it." Betty looked forward and saw that the island was lush and covered with plants. "There are sea kings nearby. It seems that no one has landed on this island for a long time." Speaking of which, Bossos is a little weird. He turned to look at Chris and asked, Captain, what should we do when the Sea Kings appear? I really don't know what to do with such a behemoth at sea. 006. Overlord is domineering. There is a reward, add another chapter. Report. Suddenly, a terrified voice came from the observation deck. The big thing is bad, there is a monster ahead. Sure enough, the seawater continued to surge, and there were many dark shadows underneath. One by one is huge and is swimming fast. Seeing this scene, everyone panicked. It's over, the monster is here. Captain, let's turn around quickly. I'm going to die, I haven't married a wife yet. What a big sea king, oops. Although Bossos was brave, he was also scared when he saw the dense dark shadows. Captain, should we just go there, will it be too dangerous? Poison Q shook his head and said with emotion, with such a large body, it is difficult to poison him even if he is poisoned. Roar tilde tilde. Suddenly, a loud roar came. A lot of monsters appeared on the sea. Some are giant snakes, some are cat faces, some are crab-like. His eyes were extremely cold, and he stared at the Chris. It seems that the next moment will launch a fierce attack. Now, those timid people can't stand anymore. Some sat down on the deck, some cried, and some squatted down with their heads. Chris, if you want to escape now, there's still time. Betty couldn't keep calm anymore, frowned, and said quickly, so many sea kings, if they attack, then. The words did not go on, but everyone understood what it meant when they heard it. Go back, Captain. Bossos wiped the cold sweat on his forehead with a look of fear on his face. The size of these sea kings is too big. I'm afraid that when they are pressed down, the whole ship has to be overturned. Suddenly, these sea kings roared in unison, as fast as lightning. Directly towards the Chris. There is a kind of appearance of Tyshawn pressing the top. So horrible. Ah! There were screams from every corner of the boat. One by one, their hearts are ashes, and they are finished. Captain, what should I do? Bashes and the others all focused their attention on Chris and shouted anxiously. Chris ignored them and took a step forward. His eyes narrowed. Go away. An extremely terrifying aura emanated from him in an instant. The air vibrated, faintly producing ripples. Quiet. The whole world went quiet. All the sea kings have been frozen. Cold sweat dripped from the huge head. The look in Chris's eyes was filled with fear. Wow tilde tilde. There was a sound of water, and these sea kings quickly got into the sea and escaped. Keep going. Chris turned his back to the crowd and shouted directly. This time, the whole ship was shocked. Long live Captain Chris tilde tilde. With the captain here, I'm not afraid of anything, go ahead. Too strong, Captain, you are really too strong. Go away, the captain is too domineering, tilde tilde. Captain Chris, I will follow you all my life, woo woo woo. Bossos looked at Chris back, and the more he looked, the more he admired it, and he couldn't help laughing. This is the domineering look that the captain said, it's really strong, way ha 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 ha. Poison Q showed a rare look of respect, stopped coughing, and said with a smile, as expected of our captain, I have taken it. Baccarat silently looked at the stalwart figure, and some inexplicable color flashed in his eyes. At this time, Betty looked at Bossos and asked curiously, you just said that this is the domineering tyrant, is this what Chris used just now? The captain said before that there are 3 kinds of domineering in this world. Bossos was excited and quickly explained. The first 2 can be practiced by everyone, and the third is the domineering arrogance. This depends on one's personal qualifications. The captain said that the overlord is domineering, very rare, and only 1 in a million people owns it. Bossos silently looked at Chris back, and said with great admiration, originally, I thought the captain was just talking. It now seems that the captain is stronger than I thought, way ha ha ha. Poison Q nodded with a serious look on his face. The captain is just different, not something we can compare to. Following such a boss, our name will definitely spread throughout the sea, ahem. Betty frowned and murmured, the Overlord is domineering. It's unbelievable that there is such a powerful force in this world. Maimyu looked at Chris' figure, smiled lightly, and felt very emotional in her heart. No wonder Chris has the guts to change the world. It turns out that he really has such strength. You Captain, I've made up my mind, looking forward to the day when you defeat the Tianlong people. Baccarat smiled and said with great certainty, when I chose Chris, I knew it very well. He is no ordinary man, destined to become a big man. Now it seems that my decision was indeed the right one. At this time, everyone on the boat finally came to their hearts and regarded Chris as their captain. 007. The Fruit of the Civet Cat, Padong. One more reward, one more chapter. On the shore of the island, the Chris slowly docked. Looking at the situation, it is true that no one has visited this island for a long time. Betty looked at the towering trees around, the flowers and plants that could not be named, such a desolate environment, it is not difficult to make such a judgment. It's time to start an adventure, I'm really looking forward to it. Bassos laughed, with an excited look on his face. Go down and have a look. Chris jumped down and came to the ground. There's a big rock there, let's go take a look. Baccarat pointed to not far away, and said with a smile. Roar tilde tilde. Suddenly, a sound came from the depths of the island. A fierce tiger jumped out quickly, its eyes were cold, and its sharp teeth flashed with cold light. I want to eat people. I can't deal with the Sea Kings, and can't deal with you. Bassos smiled disdainfully, and with a kick, it was like a sharp arrow from a bow, and it was a punch to the giant tiger. With a bang, the tiger wailed, fell to the ground, and fainted. Captain Bashes is mighty. Little fellows, applaud and praise. For the Battle of Bashes, Chris didn't pay any attention to it and walked directly to the boulder. There are treasures in it, and those who are destined can get it. The lettering is vigorous and powerful, revealing the cold sword energy. Why is this word so sharp, like a needle stick? Betty just glanced at the words on the boulder, and then quickly looked away, not daring to read more. Baccarat nodded and agreed, I also feel uncomfortable. Who the hell engraved such words is really amazing. This person's swordsmanship must be very powerful. Poison Q's tone was very affirmative. This is a great swordsman level. Chris gave the answer and walked directly to the depths of the island. Bassos didn't care about that, he said with a smile, I don't care about the rest, treasure, this is the most important thing. Betty looked at Baccarat with a look of admiration on her delicate face. As expected by you, there is indeed good luck here. Baccarat smiled and said in a sweet voice, I hope the treasures are not too bad, lest we go all the way in vain. Then, the group slowly moved towards the interior of the island. I don't know how long it took, everyone passed through the bushes, and the vision in front of them became brighter. On the empty ground, in front of it is an ancient palace. Sure enough, there is a treasure, way ha ha ha. Seeing this building, everyone understood what was going on. A smile appeared on each face, full of anticipation. Just then, a voice came from the palace in front. This is my territory, you are not allowed to come near here. The volume is not too loud, and the sound gives the impression that it is very immature, and it sounds very comfortable. Stunned. Everyone except Chris was stunned. What? Betty spit out the smoke in her mouth and looked around, but found nothing unusual. Baccarat smiled, from the sound, this should be a small animal. Talking animals are really interesting. Poison Q was lying on top of Stallone, with a weird smile on his face. Chris stepped forward and said lightly, little guy, your strength is good, follow me to the sea. There are a lot of delicious food and fun things outside, don't you want to go out and see? Swoosh tilde tilde. A small animal jumped in front of the palace and asked curiously, is it really fun outside? Can you take me out? I saw that this was a young civet cat, wearing pink clothes, blue trousers, and a very large tail that was pale gold. It was Patton. Yeah. Seeing Pa Dong's appearance, Bakara's beautiful eyes lit up, and she said with a smile, "It's a little civet cat, so cute." Betty moved her sunglasses down and glanced at the small animal in front of her, looking like she was lacking in interest. I thought it was something, but it turned out to be an underage civet cat. Bashes laughed loudly and said loudly, "Captain, this little animal can talk, it seems very unusual." Chris came to Padang with a calm face. "The outside world is more exciting than you think, you will know when you go out and take a look. If one day you don't want to stay outside and come back here, I'll send you here." After he finished speaking, he ignored Padang and walked directly to the gate of the palace. Padang's small eyes lit up, full of interest, and followed Chris. His voice was crisp and pleasant. "Boss, don't leave me, please take me with you. It's so boring here. I want to go out to sea to play and eat a lot of delicious food, hee tilde. Betty shrugged her shoulders, looked at Bakara and said, "It seems that your fruit ability is really too powerful. With you here, Chris can do anything with ease and without the slightest difficulty." Basas nodded and agreed. Sister Bakara's ability is indeed too heaven-defying. Whatever the captain does, he will have good luck. Poison Q coughed and said, "This little animal is worth studying. It's amazing. Poison Q, you are not allowed to play its ideas." Bakara glared at him and said angrily, "If such a cute little animal is killed by your doctor, I will not agree." 008. The superhuman paste fruit ability, the sweetheart queen. Crunch tilde. The wooden door was slowly opened with a crisp sound. I saw that the palace was very spacious, with no extra decorations. It was empty. In the innermost place, there is a rectangular stone table about 1 meter high, and 2 wooden boxes are placed on it. "Boss, there is a knife and a devil fruit on the table." Padang jumped on Chris' shoulders and explained with a smile. Bakara looked at Padang with beautiful eyes, and said with a sweet smile, "Little guy, how do you know so clearly?" Padang grinned, very happy. "There were originally 2 devil fruits here, but I ate one, of course there is only one left. It's amazing that animals eat devil fruits." Betty drank a cigarette and looked up and down Padang, wanting to see it clearly. Sure enough, anything in the sea is possible, way ha. Hearing Patton say this, Chris understood. It turned out that the civet cat fruit of the phantom beast species appeared on this island. What would the other fruit be? The group came to the stone table and stopped to observe. A long box with knives in it. Short box, definitely a devil fruit. I hope it's not animal, ahem tilde. Poison Q's vicissitudes of life showed a look of hope. Bashes said with a smile, "Natural type is too rare, as long as a superhuman type is enough." Without hesitation, Chris directly opened the small wooden box. The copyright of the novel resource belongs to the original author. The text is only for personal study and trial reading. Please delete it within 24 hours after downloading. Please support subscribing to Genuine Novels and refuse piracy. This novel was first published by Dragon. Feilu's novel internal group 1,142,529,731. More wonderful Feilu novels are in the hands of the group owner. Welcome to the group. Into the eye, this is a whole blue, apple-shaped devil fruit. Captain, what type is this? Is it natural? Basas had never eaten a devil fruit, so he didn't know anything about it. Betty frowned and said with some doubts, "The blue devil fruit, what kind of power could this be?" "It should be superhuman." Chris threw the fruit to Basas and opened another wooden box directly. Red light flashed. A suffocating aura suddenly erupted. The temperature of the air seems to have dropped a little. "Boss, this knife is so weird that I don't even dare to touch it." Padang sat on Chris' shoulders, swiped his tail, and looked terrified. Bakara shook his head lightly, and said with emotion, "Such a strong evil spirit, ordinary people can't use it at all, I'm afraid they will be cursed. I'm curious as to what level of sword this is. Betty looked at the red treasured sword carefully, and said seriously, the last time it was a big quick sword, maybe even the supreme big quick sword. Chris watched silently for a while, then directly grabbed the hilt of the sword. The red knife vibrated lightly, suffocating violently, and quickly drilled into Chris. Want to control Chris? Captain. Chris. Bashes and the others looked at Chris worriedly, for fear that something would happen to him. After all, this red knife is really weird. Chris's eyes turned cold, staring at the treasured knife. Submit to me. The domineering look of the overlord radiated out and charged away at the red knife. Buzzing. The broadsword vibrated rapidly and seemed to be struggling constantly, trying to get out of Chris's control. After a few seconds, the evil spirit recovered and the blade was calm. It surrendered. Chose Chris as the host. Very good. Chris pointed upwards at the big knife, nodded, and praised without hesitation. He is very satisfied with this knife. The captain is amazing, way ha ha ha. Seeing Chris getting stronger, Bossos was overjoyed. Poison Q smiled and said, in this way, the strength of the fleet will be even more terrifying. Betty and Baccarat didn't speak, and looked at Chris' figure with color in their eyes. The former is appreciation, the latter is love. At this time, the following people reported. Captain, the whole palace has been searched and nothing else has been found. Chris turned around and walked outside with a large knife in hand. Let's go, little ones. Yes, Captain Chris. The group of people walked out of the palace one after another and walked towards the outside of the island. 5 days later. Blue sky and white clouds, bright sun, seagulls chirping. What a nice weather. On the wide sea, a large ship rode the sea and moved forward fast. Inside the training room. Chris is really working so hard, he doesn't even know how to rest. Queen Sweetheart leaned against the chair, with Erlang's legs crossed. Maymay looked at the man in front of her with a sweet smile. 2 days ago, the Chris entered the West Sea and landed in the town of Canaro. It was in that place that the Sweetheart Queen was invited by Chris to board the ship and became a member of the Chris Pirates. I'm used to Chris, a cultivator madman. Betty leaned against the table, holding a cigarette, looking indifferent. Baccarat stroked the crimson hair in front of her forehead, showing a gentle and dignified smile on her beautiful and delicate face. The rules of this ship, the strong are respected. If Chris doesn't work harder, when there are more and more crew members behind, I'm afraid that the captain's position will not be able to be retained. Baccarat looked at the two of them and reminded, if you want to be a squad leader, you have to practice hard, otherwise there is really no chance. 009. Good luck, referring to Lieutenant General Peach Rabbit. Squad leader. Queen Sweetheart waved her hand and said with a wry smile, with my strength, how can I be a squad leader? To be honest, I still haven't figured out why Chris made such a boat rule. Betty flicked the cigarette butt into the sea and said lightly. For no other reason, Chris believes in his own strength, that's all. No matter how the squad leader rotates, it will not affect his captain position. He is so confident. After speaking, look forward, there is a person cultivating. Blood red, in both hands and waving it one by one. After Chris's identification, it was a supremely fast knife, and he named the treasured knife, Blood Red. Chris finally swung the knife 10,000 times to complete today's task. Then, the blood red kept getting smaller and smaller, and finally became a small red knife, which was hung by Chris around his neck. Every time I see this knife, it feels amazing. Seeing the blood red keep getting smaller, Queen Sweetheart couldn't help but sigh. Weapons can also eat devil fruits, I still can't believe it. Betty shrugged her shoulders and said lightly, there's nothing to feel sorry for, the sea is so mysterious, just get used to it. Suddenly, an alarm sounded outside. Report. There is a small town ahead, and there is. As always, repeated several times. Sweetheart Queen stood up, smiled sweetly and said, "Let's go to town to buy some cosmetics and some pretty clothes." Chris is definitely going to practice again, he won't get off the boat, let's go. Betty glanced at Chris and saw that he was holding the barbell, obviously not planning to land. It's different, this time he'll get off the boat. Baccarat looked at the constantly busy figure, smiled and said, "Chris, our luck is here again. Let's go then." Chris threw the barbell on the ground and walked directly to the door. Queen Sweetheart looked at Baccarat, blinked her eyes, and asked curiously, "Baccarat, is your intuition coming again?" Baccarat nodded slightly, smiled gently, and said nothing. "Good luck again, what will it be this time?" Betty's pretty face showed a rare look of anticipation. The group soon came to the deck outside. "Boss, can you teach me how to fish?" When Patton saw Chris appear, he quickly threw away the fishing rod, jumped off the railing, and jumped closer to Chris. "It seems that this island has good luck again, way ha ha ha." As soon as Bossa saw Chris appear, he understood what was going on and couldn't help laughing. Poison Q was lying on the deck, coughing and saying, "I hope to have a stronger partner, I really want to start the battle for the squad leader. I'll teach you later when I'm free." Chris glanced at Padang on his shoulder, then jumped down and walked towards the town. The captain is always so succinct and doesn't say a word of nonsense every time. Bossas mentioned the poisonous Q and the sick horse, and jumped down with a big laugh. 10 minutes later, Chris stood at the port to the west, silently looking at the blue sea ahead. He has already searched the entire town with a domineering look. No anomalies were found at all. He trusted Baccarat's intuition, and he must have overlooked something. At this time, the fisherman at the port passed a message. "You said, it's good, how can there be a navy here?" "Ghost knows, it has nothing to do with Lao Su anyway." "Don't say it, I saw it from a distance just now, that female navy is really strong, and the soldiers are very afraid of her. She is Lieutenant Admiral Peach Rabbit of the Navy headquarters, you don't even know each one, you're drunk. Whether she is Lieutenant General Peach Rabbit or Lieutenant General Peach Dog, it has a half-money relationship with us. But the warship is heading north. Are there pirates over there? Forget it, forget about it." At this point, how could Chris not understand this so-called good luck? "It is from Lieutenant General Peach Rabbit." Swoosh tilde tilde. Chris disappeared instantly and went to find Baccarat. "In town. Let's go to the next shop to buy clothes, I haven't bought enough yet." The Queen Sweetheart walked out of a clothing store with a large bag and a small bag. Betty shrugged her shoulders, exhaled the smoke from her mouth, and said lightly, "You go, I'm going to buy some cigarettes." Suddenly, a figure instantly appeared in front of him. "Baccarat, pause for a moment and talk to you." Chris threw Padang to the ground and said calmly, "Stay here and don't run around." After finishing speaking, he led Baccarat and walked to the side. "What are you doing, boss? Why don't you take me with you?" Padang looked at the two of them with a curious look. Queen Sweetheart rolled her eyes at it, and said angrily, "Why, there must be a secret, so ask that too." Betty looked at the back of Chris leaving, frowned, and analyzed it. "There should be something big, otherwise, it's impossible to avoid us. After all, Chris is not that kind of man. Guys, the above is the picture of Lieutenant General Tautu. Why is she mentioned here? If you can guess, the author will add it immediately, asterisk. 010, pull the Tianlong people off the altar. There is a reward, add another chapter. Inside a small alley. Seeing and hearing domineering. Lieutenant Admiral Tautu, I just left here not long ago. Her relatives were killed by Tianlong people, so she is full of hatred for the creator." Chris looked at Baccarat and said with a serious face, "Do you think I can succeed if I work with her?" Seeing Chris's solemn expression, Baccarat fell silent and did not answer immediately. The first time she saw Chris like this, she knew that this must be very important. After a while, Baccarat smiled. Chris, give me your hand. Chris didn't say much, just put his hand in front of Baccarat. Baccarat held Chris and felt at ease in her heart. She closed her beautiful eyes, and a faint white light emanated from her body, which was transmitted to Chris through her arms. In an instant, Chris felt a shock, as if something good was about to happen. This is the so-called good fortune. Chris, it's all right, it will definitely work out. Baccarat released her hand, her face pale and morbid. Chris rarely showed a concerned look and asked, Baccarat, are you all right? Chris, don't worry, my luck will be back in a few days. Baccarat stroked her crimson hair, smiled sweetly and said, I'm overdrafted, I'll just rest for a few days. Go quickly, lest the luck on your body dissipate. Chris nodded and smiled slightly. You go to Betty and the others, and I'll come when I go. With a swoosh, the person disappeared, shuttled through space, and headed north. The West Sea, above a certain sea area. A warship cut through the sea and sailed fast. Inside a room. In a few days, you can go back to the headquarters, and finally don't have to float around. Tautu stood in front of the window, looking at the blue sky and white clouds outside, feeling relaxed for no reason. Suddenly, there was a faint voice in the room. Excuse me, Lieutenant General Tautu. There's something I want to talk to you about. It's about the dragon people. Startled, Tautu quickly turned around and looked to the left. I saw a young man leaning against the table with his hands in his trouser pockets. Cool look. Who are you? Tautu narrowed her eyes slightly. Her right hand was quietly placed on the hilt of the sword, her mental energy was highly concentrated. To be able to appear here quietly, this man is really dangerous. Please don't get excited, Lieutenant General Peach Rabbit. Chris shrugged and said calmly, my name is Chris, and I'm a pirate. You can also think of me as Chihuahai, because in a short while, my identity will be this. Continue the conversation just now, Dragonborn. Tautu walked over slowly, and the cloak with Justice written on it looked so dazzling. Do you think it's possible to be Chihuahai? Also, you, a pirate, dare to show your face in front of me, you are bold enough. Tautu stopped, her eyes flickering with cold light, and said coldly, go ahead, I'd like to see what you're going to do. Chris folded his arms in front of him with a calm face. I have made a series of plans, as long as we work together. It will definitely be able to overthrow the rule of the Tianlong people, and pull these damned guys down from the altar one by one. Tautu was stunned and said incredulously, do you know what you are talking about? Just relying on your words is enough for you to die 100 times. Chris ignored Tautu's words and explained it to himself. Ming people don't speak secretly, Lieutenant General Tautu, we have a common enemy, let's cooperate. If you don't want to avenge your loved ones, then don't tell me. Hearing this, Tautu's eyes became cold, and the sword seemed to be unsheathed at any time. Say, how do you know this? At this moment, Tautu was very shocked in her heart. She never thought that this young man actually knew his biggest secret. Even things that CP9 didn't understand were actually known to him. It's too shocking. How do I know it's not important? The key is to talk about cooperation. Chris said bluntly, your strength is indeed very powerful, very terrifying. But on your own, if you want to overthrow the Tianlong people's rule, it is simply a fantasy and impossible to achieve. However, as long as we work together, then all this can be solved easily. Tautu's heart was a little moved, but there was a disdainful expression on her pretty face. With a snort, he said sarcastically, it's just you. Who do you think you are? Even the strongest man in the world, Whitebeard, would not dare to say such a thing. Tautu looked at Chris and said coldly, I'm curious, why are you so arrogant? The corners of Chris' mouth raised slightly, revealing a confident smile. Then have a fight and speak with the facts. Chris took a step forward, put his right hand in front of Tautu, and said calmly, give me your hand, take you to a place, and you will know the answer later. Tautu frowned slightly, looked Chris up and down, and seemed to want to see him clearly. However, she was destined to be disappointed. The man in front of him was very calm, and he couldn't see the slightest flaw at all. That being the case, Tautu didn't hesitate and picked up the jade. Promised Chris. Go away. As soon as Chris' voice fell, with a bang, the two disappeared in place. Guys, please explain. Tautu's relatives were killed by the Tianlong people. This was compiled for the needs of the plot. Don't take your seats right, it's all fake. 011. Hunt Admiral Akainu. West China Sea, over a certain sea area. At this moment, the two figures were constantly shuttled in the air at an astonishingly fast speed. What's your ability? Looking at the receding sea level, Tautu's heart was simply shocked. Such a terrifying speed is really unheard of. Called the world's first. I ate the fruit of rejection. This is the ability I developed, and I named it, the space of rejection. As soon as Chris' voice fell, the two landed on an island. It is Padong's hometown. Tautu looked at the ancient palace in front of him, surrounded by towering trees, and couldn't help asking. Where is this? At this time, she felt that the man in front of her was so mysterious. What a terrible young man. Chris shrugged his shoulders and said calmly, an island with no one, you can let go of your hands and feet and fight. I want to cooperate with you, but I don't have enough strength, so how can I do it? Tautu pulled out the hilt of his sword, and Jinpyra shone with a cold light under the sunlight. With a sneer, he said disdainfully, your speed is indeed very terrifying. But that's all there is to it. Roar tilde tilde. The roar of a beast was heard not far away, the ground shook, and it was approaching. Before you hit, clear the obstacles around you. As soon as the voice fell, the domineering look of the overlord radiated out, and there was a whine from nearby. All the animals felt this terrifying momentum and hurriedly fled. Tautu was secretly shocked, the expression on her pretty face did not change, and she said lightly, no wonder you dare to challenge the Tianlong people, you really have great spirit. Then, let me see your true strength. With a kick of footsteps, he charged towards Chris with his sword in hand. 10 minutes later. Do you still want to fight? Chris stood quietly, his expression indifferent, without the slightest pressure. Tautu put away Jinpailuo, with emotion on her pretty face, she said in disbelief, so young, he has such a powerful strength. It seems that the world is destined to change. Immediately afterwards, Tautu looked at Chris with a solemn expression, dragon people have ruled the sea for so many years, but no one has ever dared to resist. With our strength, it is simply not enough to shake the world and change anything. Then tell me how you planned it, I'd love to hear it. Hearing Tautu say this, Chris knew that things had been successful. The lieutenant general of this headquarters, the alternate general, agreed to cooperate. Go back to the warship first, so as not to be discovered. Then, he traveled through space again, and soon returned to Tautu's room. Looking at the familiar environment, Tautu shook his head slightly, and said with emotion, even if the speed of light of Pulsalino can't be compared with you. Okay, no more nonsense, let's talk about the next plan now. Snapped. Chris lit a cigarette and gave the answer directly without thinking much. Tell me about your situation first. First, after you go back, try to win over your subordinates as much as possible. These will play a big role in future battles. Tautu nodded and said in agreement, no problem, I will handle this with caution. Chris blew the smoke out of his mouth and spoke his second plan. You are a general candidate now, and you must find a way to remove the word, alternate. Chris looked at Tautu and said seriously, only if you become a general can you provide us with the greatest help. Tautu frowned, a little embarrassed. Now that the 3 generals are full, I have no chance at all. I can't do this. Chris nodded, indicating that he understood and gave the answer directly. So, we have to get rid of one of them, and as long as there is a vacancy in the 3 generals, then your chance will come. What? Peach Rabbit was shocked. May's eyes widened, thinking that she had heard it wrong, and quickly asked, "What are you talking about? How is this possible?" "Nothing is impossible." Chris looked indifferent, took a breath and said, "The general is the highest combat power of the Navy and the strongest existence. In history, no general has ever been killed, no one has ever been able to do such a thing. However, in my opinion, as long as the right opportunity is found, the hunt can be successful." Tautu fell silent. She still couldn't believe what Chris said. Hunting generals, how is this possible? Can anyone really do it? After a few seconds, she said slowly, "Since you said so, there must be a detailed plan, let's hear it. Now, let's analyze the three generals." Chris took a breath, his eyes flashed with wisdom. "Pelusolino, this guy is too fast, it's hard to start, and the probability of success is low. Aokiji can freeze the sea, whether it is land or sea, it will not have the slightest impact on his battle." Chris looked at Tautu and said in a deep voice, "So, our goal is to choose Sakazuki. He is a capable person. As long as he appears on the sea, his combat power will not be able to exert much. I want to hunt him, I am 100% sure." 012. Superman, Sonic Fruit. Above Chris. What the hell is the captain doing? Why hasn't he come back? Bassos kept looking in the direction of the town, but there was no one in sight. Poison Q Kiki said, "I'm curious. Will there be new partners?" Padong ignored them, holding a fishing rod, bouncing and waving, and said something with a smile. "Let's go fishing, this time I'm going to catch a big fish." Betty looked at Baccarat and took a breath. Did Chris say that? When will it come? Baccarat folded her hair and smiled, showing a dignified and elegant attitude. "Wait in peace, he'll be back soon." Sure enough, a voice rang out. "Little ones, young fan, set sail." The figure flashed, and the person had appeared on the deck. "The captain is back, everyone hurry up and move." Then, the big ship slowly left the coast and headed for the depths of the sea. "Boss, come back." Patton jumped on top of Chris's shoulder, which was his favorite place to stay. Bassos looked left and right, making sure there was no other figure, and couldn't help asking, "Captain, is there no newcomer joining?" Poison Q said with some regret, "It seems that the battle for the squad leader has to be delayed again." Chris ignored them, looked at Baccarat, and nodded. "After that, I walked directly to the training room and continued to work hard." Chris nods at you. "What does that mean? Can you steal us?" Queen Sweetheart looked at Baccarat, her beautiful eyes blinked, very curious. Yes, Miss Baccarat, can you tell us?" Bassos immediately became interested and pleaded. Everyone looked at Baccarat, eager to know the answer. "You were really..." Baccarat rolled their eyes at them and said angrily, "Don't you know what kind of person Chris is? Do you think he'll spare me if I say it? One by one will pit me, and if you want me to be punished, just say it." Poison Q glanced at them and said with a weird smile, "The captain is a ruthless man. Anyone who hinders his plan will definitely be killed." Bassos shrugged his shoulders with a helpless look on his face. "Forget it, I don't ask about it, so as not to cause trouble." Padong sat on the railing, catching fish, turned his head and asked, "What are you talking about? The old man is easy to talk, not cruel at all." "What do you know?" Betty glanced at it and said coldly, "Catch your fish with peace of mind, don't talk nonsense." Queen Sweetheart stroked her golden hair and smiled sweetly, "I don't care about you, I'll go see Chris to practice." "Let's go, it's okay to be idle anyway, let's go together." Baccarat took the Queen Sweetheart and walked to the training room with a smile. The three walked into the training room and saw two things on the table. A devil fruit, and a book. "Look for it and see what power this fruit has." Chris stood upside down, exercising with one hand and practicing physique. Betty glanced at the book on the table with a shocked look on her pretty face. "This is the devil fruit illustration. Sweetheart Queen froze for a moment and said in disbelief, "Is this true? I heard that this thing is very rare. I thought it was just a rumor, but I didn't expect it to actually exist." Baccarat picked up the book. She knew what was going on. It must be Lieutenant General Peach Rabbit to Chris. There is no other possibility. 5 minutes later. Stop. The Sweetheart Queen pointed to the devil fruit on the book and said with a smile, "Look, this one is exactly the same, this time it's right." Betty glanced at the devil fruit on the table, then checked the picture book, and nodded. "It's exactly the same, it's the fruit that's right." Baccarat raised her head, her beautiful eyes looked forward, and said with a smile, "Chris, this is a superhuman, sonic fruit. The book says that after eating this devil fruit, a person with power can turn his roar into a sonic cannon with powerful destructive power. Also, the louder the roar, the stronger the destructive power of the sonic cannon." Queen Sweetheart's eyes lit up, as if thinking of something. She said quickly, "I suddenly found out that this fruit is very suitable for Bossos. That guy has a very loud voice. If he eats this devil fruit, he will definitely be able to play it perfectly." At this moment, Chris heard a voice. "Give him the fruit and let him decide for himself." Baccarat nodded and said with a smile, "I'll take it." Queen Sweetheart patted Baccarat on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Let's go together. I would love to see the power of this fruit." Betty said lightly, "Are you so sure he will eat it? Some people don't care about devil fruits at all, and they don't necessarily want to be able." Soon, the three of them came to the deck. At this time, Bossos was leaning on the deck chair, basking in the sun. "Bashes, your luck is here." Sweetheart Queen looked at the big man and made a joke. Poison Q saw the book in Baccarat's hand, and his face was full of horror. "That's the devil fruit picture book. It's incredible that the rumors turned out to be true." 013, good luck is here again. Devil fruit illustration, what is this stuff? As soon as Padong heard something new, he immediately became interested, dropped the fishing rod, and jumped directly over. Betty glanced at the little guy and said lightly, "The book that records the devil fruit, you can understand it like this. Finally know what devil fruit it is. Let's talk about it. Will it suit me?" When he got this devil fruit, Bossos wanted to eat it. But everyone doesn't know what kind of fruit ability this is, so naturally they don't dare to act rashly. Baccarat handed him the fruit, and said with a smile, "What is the specific ability? Look at the picture book." After speaking, he opened the book and turned to the page of the sound wave fruit. Turn the sound into a laser cannon. The louder the roar, the stronger the power. Bossos was excited, raised his arms high, and said with a big laugh, "Great, this fruit is very suitable for Lao Su, way ha 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 ha." Poison Q looked at the group of Baccarat and coughed. "What did the captain say? Does he want Bossos to eat the fruit?" Bossos also reacted and quickly asked, "Yes, what did the captain say? Do you think I am suitable?" Queen Sweetheart rolled his eyes at him and sneered, "Do you think Chris would say these things as a person? He didn't even come over. You think he would say more?" Betty glanced at Bossos and said lightly, "Chris said it, you can do it yourself." "Hey, that's all." Baccarat waved his hand, not letting the two of them say anything more, and took the initiative to explain. "Chris is busy cultivating. He doesn't say much about this kind of thing, just let you make your own decision. But I personally think that this devil fruit is indeed very suitable for you." Poison Q showed a weird smile and said directly, "As expected, it's the captain, and he doesn't care about these little things." Bossos shrugged his shoulders with a helpless look on his face. The captain is so cruel, he doesn't care about his crew at all. However, this fruit, I have decided to eat it. After speaking, he took a big bite. In an instant, the expression on his face changed, showing the color of pig liver. Sweetheart Queen covered her mouth and laughed softly, and said in a sweet voice, "It's so funny to see you like this." Betty shook her head slightly and sighed with emotion. Seeing him like this, I remembered the scene of eating devil fruit before. It's really disgusting. Padong jumped up and down, and said excitedly with a small face, Captain Basas, take a look at your fruit ability, it must be very powerful. Then you can be optimistic, don't be shocked. Bashes strode to the railing and looked at the sea level ahead. Roar tilde tilde. The big mouth opened, and blue-white light appeared in the mouth, which kept gathering. Call out. A blue-white light beam was excited from his mouth and quickly swept across the sea level. Bang. From the sea in the distance, there was a loud bang. The sea suddenly surged with waves, and the momentum was amazing. Seeing this scene, everyone was frightened. Captain Bashes is mighty. The crew members who were busy with their work hurriedly shouted and sent flowers and applause. The Queen's sweetheart looked surprised and murmured, what a powerful devil fruit, it's terrifying. Betty threw away the cigarette butts and said lightly, this devil fruit has a really strong attack power, if it is hit from the front. Shaking his head, he didn't say anything more. Bakara looked at Basas and said with a smile, congratulations, Captain Basas, you are the captain of the next team. Hearing everyone's compliments, Basas was very upset, raised his arms, and laughed, way ha 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 ha. Bosses, I think your chance has come. Poison Q looked at him with a mysterious smile, and persuaded, you are so powerful, let's start the captain battle directly. Basas glared at him and cursed. Do you want Lao Su to die? Get out of here. If you want to challenge yourself, I don't have the guts. I want to live a few more years. Padong jumped and said with a smile, it's fun, this fruit is so interesting. Bakara looked at the two of them, frowning, let's take it back to the training room. Then, the three of them chatted and laughed, and went to watch Chris practice again. 4 days later. The sea near the town of Conlinya. Inside the training room. Chris, don't practice for now, our luck is here again. Bakara was leaning against the chair, with Erlang's legs crossed. Mei looked at the stalwart figure, her eyes were full of brilliance. Good luck again, what will it be this time? I'm looking forward to it. Queen Sweetheart's eyes lit up, and her beautiful and delicate face was full of interest. Betty shrugged, looked at Bakara, and said with admiration, every time I hear you say that, I feel very incredible. Your fruit ability is really amazing. Then go to the island. Chris wiped off his sweat with a towel, threw it away, and strode to the door. The three beauties, without saying much, followed behind Chris and walked to the deck together. 014, West Coast Security Officer, Lafitte. On the deck. The captain is here, and it looks like he has good luck again. Poison Q saw Chris appear, he knew what was going on. Bashes looked at Kanglinya town and said with a big laugh, I hope a newcomer will come and let Lao Su have a good fight, way ha 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 ha. Let's go. Chris never talked nonsense, jumped directly under the boat, and landed on the island. Boss, wait for me tilde tilde. Padong hurriedly jumped down and came to Chris's shoulder. Then, the group walked to the town. Under a big tree. There was a man sitting on the chair, and there was a large group of people on the opposite side. Lafitte, everyone has sued me that you have endangered the safety of the town with excessive violence. Mayor looked at Lafitte and said unceremoniously, now I officially inform that you have been expelled, and our town does not welcome you. Yes, a wicked person like you shouldn't let you stay here. What security officer? He's just a jerk. Yesterday he beat someone again. He beat that person so badly that I can't stand it anymore. Lafitte, please get out of here and go somewhere else. Yes, let you stay here, our town will be destroyed sooner or later, please leave. Lafayette leaned back in his chair, turned his cane, and smiled politely. Although everyone doesn't like me, I won't be angry. If that's the case, then I'll get out of here. Lafitte stood up, adjusted his black top hat, and said with a slight smile, it seems that the time has come. It's time for my name to spread throughout the sea. Seeing that Lafitte said so, the mayor didn't say much, and waved his hand. "Come on, let's go back." After speaking, he led the residents away. Suddenly, there was laughter from behind. "Captain, just this guy, no matter how I look at it, I don't feel strong, way ha 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 ha." Lafitte turned his cane and looked back. The leader was a young man in black clothes and black trousers, with a calm and rational demeanor, and at a glance he knew that it was not easy to deal with. Behind him, there were several women, a big man, a sick man, and some small ones. Poison Q coughed and said, "When you fight him, don't you know how strong you are? You bastard, you've been instigating bashes." Queen Sweetheart glanced at him and said angrily, "I will let him challenge Chris, and then challenge others. You like watching fights so much." Chris came forward and stopped, with a calm look on his face. "If you want to go to sea, then follow us. It won't take long for you to be famous all over the world and become a big name." Lafitte stood his cane in front of him, put his hands on it, and asked politely, "Excuse me, who are you guys?" Bassos is straight-minded and said with a big laugh, "It doesn't matter who it is, it's going to be a big deal anyway. But with your small body, after you get on the boat, I'm afraid you will be at the bottom." Betty shrugged, a little speechless. "If you keep talking, no one will get on the boat later." Sweetheart Queen Ying Ying smiled and said jokingly, "He needs to be beaten, he needs a good beating from Chris." Chris looked at Lafitte and gave the answer. "You can think so, I'm a man who is about to become Shichibukai. If you want to be famous, get on this boat, it's that simple." Lafitte turned his cane, smiled gently, and said very gentlemanly, "Since I can achieve my goal, then I will definitely get on the boat." "Thank you, Captain, for taking me in," Lafitte is very grateful. Chris nodded and said something confidently. "In the future, you will be honored for today's decision." After speaking, he turned around and walked towards the coast. Baccarat took elegant steps and said with a smile, "There is one more person, it's even more lively when you get off the boat." Queen Sweetheart blinked her beautiful eyes, a little narrowly. "I hope his strength is not too bad, or he will definitely be bullied by Bassos. Now that you've decided to get on board, let's have a fight, Lafitte." Bassos looked at him with arrogance and started to invite battle directly. Poison Q smiled mysteriously, "I've been waiting for this day, I've been waiting for a long time, and it's finally coming." Lafitte held the cane behind him and asked politely, "Why do you want to fight with me, aren't we partners?" "You don't know that." Bashes said loudly, "Our ship has a rule, the strong are respected. As long as you have the strength, then you can challenge anyone, even the captain." Having said that, Bashes shrugged his shoulders and said with a strange smile, "Let's not talk about the battle for captains, this is too difficult, and you are not qualified. But you can participate in the battle for vice captain. How about it, find a place and have a good fight. I haven't done anything for a long time, so I really want to hit someone." Lafitte's fair face showed interest, nodded and agreed. "This boat rule is very interesting. But you're right, the captain gave me the feeling that it was too terrifying, and I definitely wouldn't dare to challenge him." Lafayette turned his cane and said with a gentle smile, "I can't be the captain, but I'll take this position as the vice captain." Lafitte has appeared, and the battle for the squad leader can be started next. Are you looking forward to it? Well, the expectation is right, asterisk. 015, the battle of the vice captains, begin. Chris, leave them alone. Queen Sweetheart glanced behind her, a worried look on her pretty face. Betty said lightly, "There is nothing to worry about, this day will definitely come, it is not surprising at all." Baccarat shook his head slightly and smiled bitterly. "Although I don't like to fight and kill, but our ship rules, this kind of thing is destined to be unavoidable." Chris looked straight ahead and said calmly, "The natural selection, the survival of the fittest, the weak have no right to speak." Soon, the group returned to the Chris. The big ship pulled out and headed for the deep sea. "Captain, find an uninhabited island, and I'm going to fight." Bossos looked at Chris with a confident look. Poison Q leaned against the chair, showing a rare excited look, and said, "It's finally going to start. I've been waiting for a long time." Lafitte turned his cane in a polite manner. "Captain, since Bossos wants to challenge me, then agree to him. I won't give up the position of vice captain to anyone else." Chris nodded and reminded, "It's okay to hit, just be careful. If anyone goes too far, don't blame me for killing him." After he finished speaking, he walked directly to the training room without looking at them. Queen Sweetheart rolled them a glance and said angrily, "I don't understand, why do you like fighting so much, huh?" Baccarat waved his hand and smiled, "Okay, let's go to see Chris practice, let them go." The three beauties, chatting, followed Chris away. "Lafitte, let me tell you in advance, I am a superhuman sonic fruit person who can shoot laser cannons from my mouth." Bacchus shrugged his shoulders and said with a smile, "If you're not sure, then admit defeat. After all, if I maim you, the captain will kill me." Poison Q rarely showed a serious expression and said solemnly, "You are right, the captain is not a good talker. If you really crippled Lafitte, today next year will be your Memorial Day." Lafitte adjusted his top hat and replied politely, "Don't worry, I'm not as weak as you think. Also, I will pay attention when I start, it won't hurt you." Inside the training room, the Sweetheart Queen sat in the chair and said with a smile, "Who do you think will win?" Betty lit a cigarette and said lightly, "It must be Bossos, needless to say. This guy's devil fruit is really too powerful, how could he possibly lose?" Baccarat looked at the two of them and smiled gently. "What are you guessing here? Just ask Chris and you'll know." The Queen Sweetheart laughed, nodded and said, "That's what you said too. Let's leave this kind of professional question to our captain. Chris, let me ask you something, do you think it's Lafayette or Bossos?" All three looked at the man in front, waiting for him to give a standard answer. Chris brandished the blood-red sword without thinking, and said directly, "Lafitte is stronger." Stunned, the three big beauties looked at each other in disbelief. What did Chris say? Queen Sweetheart looked puzzled and said in disbelief, "He said that Lafitte is stronger, I heard it right." Betty spit out the smoke in her mouth, frowning, very confused. How could it be him? No way. This guy looks like a theatrical actor with such white skin as a little white face. How could he possibly be Boss's opponent? Baccarat shook his head and said with a wry smile, "We can't find the answer, let's listen to what Chris has to say." Chris brandished his sword and gave a simple sentence without explanation. "When they fight, you'll know the answer. Lafitte is a hidden master. Dare to rush to the Navy headquarters during the Chihuahua meeting. Advance to the city, hypnotize the Navy, open the door of justice." When Blackbeard fought Ace, he easily avoided Ace's flame attack. Too many examples have proved that this guy is very powerful. The three looked at each other again, and they knew Chris' character. Since he said so, there will be no answer if you keep asking. I'll take a good look later to see if it's really what Chris said. The Sweetheart Queen still couldn't believe it, how could Bossos lose? Betty took a breath and said lightly, "Chris said so, and the result must be Lafitte winning. But I'm also curious, and I'll have to take a good look later." Baccarat realized that the two of them were the same, and became angry. "You two. Why don't all of them think it's a big deal, and the discussion gets more and more exciting? We are women, so don't join in the fun." Queen Sweetheart patted Baccarat on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Aren't we boring, let's have some fun." 3 hours later. See. There is an uninhabited island in the front left, and there is. The alarm officer at the observation deck also knew what was going to happen next, and was very excited. The siren was so loud that it even took the strength to eat. 016, the position of the deputy captain is calling me. Inside the training room. Wow. With an excited look on the pretty face of the sweet queen, she said quickly, "Hurry up, let's go out quickly." On Betty's delicate face, a rare expression of interest appeared. Let's go and see if Chris is right. Baccara looked at the constantly busy figure, her eyebrows curved, and she said with a gentle smile, Chris, why don't you go take a look? The result is already doomed, there is nothing to see. Chris hasn't finished the task, and continues to wave blood red, very seriously. Betty strode outside and said lightly, I knew it would be like this. Our captain, who only knows how to cultivate, is there to take care of these things. The sweetheart queen hurriedly followed and said something with a smile. Yeah, I guessed Chris would say that too, and it does. Baccara took a last look ahead and smiled sweetly, we'll come over and tell you the answer later, you can get busy first. Soon, the three walked out of the training room and walked to the deck. Come on, Captain Bassos. Padang likes to play tricks the most, jumping up and down, and said with a smile, and Captain Lafitte, you have to do your best, he tilde tilde. Poison Q rarely stood up, smiled strangely, and looked at the two of them. Don't listen to the captain and be timid. If you want to fight, then fight to the death. It's like a man. Bassos glared at him and roared. Poison Q, don't keep saying these things, your mother-in-law. Don't be slaughtered by the captain one day, I won't speak to you. Lafitte adjusted his top hat and said politely, the captain looks like a very domineering person. You always sing against him, don't really get slaughtered. I believe that this kind of thing, the captain must be able to do it. Queen Sweetheart came over, smiled sweetly and said, that's right, that's the truth. This guy, Poison Q, is always making a fool of himself there, maybe one day he will be cleaned up by Chris. Betty said lightly, don't worry, we won't talk to you at that time, you should be very clear about this. Baccara rolled their eyes at them, and said angrily, one by one, you are so cruel to Chris. Our captain, although a little stronger, will not do such a thing. You really think too much. Lafitte glanced in the direction of the training room, and asked a gentleman, can't the captain come and take a look? Bashes shrugged his shoulders and said helplessly, I knew the captain would do this. He is not interested in these things at all. I don't care about anything other than cultivation. Isn't this very good? Poison Q smiled and continued to stimulate the two of them. The captain is not here, you can just let go and have a big fight. It's so boring if you don't play in the dark. To Poison Q's death, glanced at Lafitte, and laughed. Go on, let's see how I abuse you, way ha 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 ha. After speaking, he jumped directly to the island, eager to fight. Lafayette was not angry either, but was still polite and said with a slight smile, as you wish. The figure flashed, and also left the Chris. Queen Sweetheart looked at Poison Q and asked curiously, why, aren't you going to join in the fun? I'm frail and sick, how can I get off the boat? Poison Q slowly walked towards the railing. Betty looked at the two of them and said lightly, come on, let's go to the railing. Soon, everyone gathered at the railing and looked over the island. The island is not big, with green trees and grotesque flowers and plants. It should have been a long time since no one has landed here. Come on, Captain Bassos, Captain Lafitte, you all have to cheer up tilde tilde. Padang sat on the railing with a smile on his face, very happy. Captain Bassos, I'm optimistic about you, don't lose. Let the storm come harder. I'm so excited, I really want to hit people, what should I do? Captain Bassos, Captain Lafitte, you are all good, I admire you. I declare now, the battle begins. Men, who advocate force the most, like to watch this kind of bloody fight. One by one, they were extremely excited, shouting and cheering, and their voices were shocking. Hearing the tsunami-like shouting in his ears, Baccara shook his head and said with a wry smile, these guys, all of them like to join in the fun. Don't say it yet. Queen Sweetheart's beautiful eyes looked at the two people below, with a look of anticipation on her pretty face. I feel so excited when they shout like this, I really want to shout with them. Betty lit a cigarette and said lightly, "It's about to start. I would like to see what kind of skills this Lafitte has, which is worthy of Chris' approval." At this time, on the island, Bassos and Lafitte were standing opposite each other. A gust of wind blew, the leaves rustled, and the flowers and plants swayed gently. Seems to be cheering for both of them. "Lafitte, I'll warn you one last time, it's too late to throw in the towel." Bassos twisted his neck, ready to warm up. Lafitte turned his cane and said politely, "I also want to admit defeat, but the position of the co-captain is calling me." "Bosses, don't worry, I will control it well and won't hurt you." This chapter renders the atmosphere and is a bit watery. I hope everyone will not dislike it. It will not be like this in the future, the author guarantees. *017. Sahua celebrates the birth of the vice captain. "Okay, Rory, let's have a good time." Bassos is a forthright person, most annoying to say nonsense, and bluntly threw out a sentence. "Since you won't admit defeat, then I can start." As soon as the voice fell, the footsteps kicked, as fast as lightning, and rushed directly towards Lafitte. Lafitte turned his cane and said politely, "Your speed is too slow, let's use your fruit ability." With a bang, the person has flashed more than 10 meters away. Can't see how it moves at all. Shock. Everyone was shocked. "Did you see clearly? He did it." The Queen's sweetheart looked at the two of them with a surprised look on her pretty face. She couldn't understand it at all. Betty frowned and said with great confusion, "I didn't see it clearly, I feel like he disappeared suddenly. I've only seen such a speed in one person." Baccarat nodded and agreed. "I have never seen anyone with such speed except for Chris, it's really scary." "That's amazing, Captain Lafitte." Padang didn't care about this at all. He thought it was funny and clapped directly. "Not bad, fast enough." Bashes laughed and said loudly, "Then next, I have to be serious." Roar tilde tilde. The roar sounded, and the white and blue light gathered in the mouth, and the shadow of thunder and lightning faintly flickered. "Looks so powerful." Lafitte adjusted his top hat and said with a slight smile, "Not only did you eat devil fruits, but I also have them." Shoo! Suddenly, behind Lafitte, a pair of white wings appeared. Under the sunlight, it is snow white, very beautiful. This time, everyone was stunned again. "Wow wow wow." Padang was amazed, clapped again and again, and said with a smile, "What a beautiful wing, so fun, hee tilde tilde." Poison Q coughed, unbelievable, and never thought that Lafitte was also a capable person. "It seems that this battle will be very exciting, but don't be soft-hearted." Queen Sweetheart's beautiful eyes lit up, with an envious look on her pretty face, and murmured, "If only I had such beautiful wings on my body, that would be great." Betty spit out the smoke in her mouth, nodded, and said lightly, "I understand why Chris said that. With these wings, Lafitte will move faster. I'm afraid Bassos is not his opponent." Baccarat pulled her hair together, gentle and dignified, and said curiously, "This must be a zoology, and it should be an ancient species. After all, animal-type phantom beasts are really rare, so it shouldn't be very likely." Bassos saw Lafitte's wings, and after being stunned for a moment, he ignored it. "Call out." The laser cannon emitted from the mouth, blue-white light, with the power of thunder and lightning, quickly passing through the void. Powerful. Fluttering. Lafitte slapped his wings, brought a gust of wind, and quickly rushed to the sky. Boom tilde tilde. The explosion sounded, and all the trees and flowers in front were destroyed, not even the slag was left. The smoke and dust rose, and there were flowers everywhere, and the smoke was billowing. "It's like dying. It's very powerful." Lafitte flapped his snow-white wings, looked down at Bassos, and said with a slight smile, "It's a pity that your speed is still too slow after all. Bashes, if you only have such strength, then I'm sorry, the position of the deputy captain belongs to me." With a swoosh, like lightning, it flew right above Bassos, with the stick facing down, launching the first wave of attacks. "Don't underestimate me, bastard." With a big mouth, the blue and white light appeared again. You have no chance. Lafitte waved his cane and shouted coldly, hypnosis. A faint mental fluctuation, from top to bottom, penetrated into Bash's mind before he could react. In an instant, the blue-white light in the mouth all dissipated. Bassos did not move, just like a block of wood, standing blankly. There is absolutely no response to everything outside. You lost, Bassos. Hearing this voice, Bassos immediately came back to his senses. Surprised. Lafitte's cane was pointing at his neck, and he was only a little bit close to stabbing himself. The scene changed so quickly, not to mention Bassos, even the people on the side didn't react. Why did you suddenly lose? Why was Bassos motionless just now? What happened? The queen's sweetheart wrinkled her beautiful eyebrows with a puzzled look on her face. Betty spit out the smoke from her mouth and said lightly, Lafitte said the word hypnosis just now. It seems that this guy is not only capable, but also hypnotized. Zizzo, I can see it. This guy was named by Chris, and he is indeed a hidden master. Baccara raised her eyebrows, smiled and said, of course. Who is Chris? How could he be wrong? Poison Q looked at Lafitte, his eyes were cold, and he said something with a mysterious smile. This guy is so strong, let him fight the captain and see who is stronger. At this time, Bassos finally understood, touched his head, and laughed. Lafitte, you are so powerful that you can even hypnotize. I'm done, from now on, you're the deputy captain, way ha ha ha. Lafitte put away his cane, turned around, and said politely, it's my honor to be the vice captain of the Chris Pirates. In the days to come, please take care of everyone. Next, thunderous applause broke out on the ship, and all of them congratulated our vice captain, Lafitte. Finally there is a co-captain, hooray tilde tilde. The captain is super strong, and the deputy captain is also very strong. Who is our opponent now? La la la. It's a banquet to celebrate the birth of the vice captain, let's all cheer up. Big guys, because Lafitte will become the vice captain and is a heavyweight figure, there is a lot of writing and ink on him. I hope everyone understands that the author has no words. 018. The superhuman ghost fruit ability, Perona. 3 days later. On the deck, several people were basking in the sun. I just don't understand how the captain would accept Perona. Bassos leaned back in the chair and said with a gloomy expression, this woman is so unruly and her character is extremely bad. I'm really afraid of her. Yesterday, Baccara felt good luck again and landed in the town of Werna. There, I met Perona, and as for the next situation, I don't need to say more. No, Captain Bassos, how could you say that? Padong was still so keen on fishing, sitting at the railing, turned his head and said with a smile, Sister Perona is so good at talking, she likes me so much. Bassos glared at it and said angrily. What do you know? Catch your fish with peace of mind. Every time I see Perona, I feel weird in my heart. It's really uncomfortable. Lafitte turned his cane and said with a slight smile, that's why you are too flamboyant, that's why she targets you. Unlike me, she doesn't play pranks on me when I speak kindly. Poison Q looked at Bassos, with a weird smile on his face, mocking him. It's funny to think about the bad luck of Bassos. I really want to watch it again, but I can't seem to get enough of it. Bassos was dissatisfied and scolded the poisonous Q. You want to see it so much, believe it or not, it will make you lie on the ground. Suddenly, a silver bell-like voice came over. Ha 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 ha. Perona slowly floated over, with a mischievous smile on her little face, and her voice was crisp and sweet. It's unforgivable that you are secretly speaking ill of this princess. Ghost ghost. As soon as the voice fell, a few pale white ghosts quickly flew towards Bosses. As soon as Bosses heard Perona's voice, he quickly stood up, raised his hand to stop him, and said, no, don't come. Before he could finish speaking, several ghosts passed through his body and flew backwards. In an instant, Bashar's face changed, and his body exuded an extremely pessimistic aura. Plop. A rubbish person like me shouldn't live in this world. Bassos knelt on the ground, his expression was very painful, and he was very remorseful. Lafitte stood his cane in front of him, looked at Poison Q, and said with a slight smile, "Don't you like to watch it, now you're satisfied?" Poison Q nodded, smiling, very happy. "Bosses looks like this, I just want to laugh, he tilde tilde." At this time, Bashes finally came back to his senses, stood up quickly, with a look of anger, angrily cursing, "Damn Perona, you." Before the words were finished, the ghost passed through his body again. If there was an afterlife, I would be a piece of shit. This time it was even more miserable, crying bitterly, and was extremely sad. Padong clapped his little hands, clapped his hands, and said with a smile, "It's fun, Sister Perona, continue. Don't mess with this eldest lady in the future." Lafitte shook his head, sighed with emotion, and walked to the railing, hiding far away. "I don't want to experience such a thing." Poison Q stood up and hurried to the side. The crew members on the side were scared to death when they saw such a terrifying scene, and they all hid. "Zizzo, this new lady is terrifying. I heard that this is called a negative ghost. As long as it is passed through by a ghost, it will become extremely negative." "It's more than negative. You didn't see Captain Bassos, you're going to be a piece of shit. Don't talk about this, you don't want to die." "I don't know anything, don't talk to me." The people below were all whispering, looking at Perona with fear. At this time, Bassos wanted to stand up again, and yelled, "Perona, you stinky girl, I." Still the same, the ghost passed through, not letting him continue talking at all. "How can an ugly man like me stay in the same boat with everyone?" Suddenly, Perona withdrew all the ghosts and let out a crisp laugh. "If you dare to say bad things about me in the future, I won't forgive you easily, Haley, ha 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 ha." Amidst the laughter, the man flew into the distance, and soon disappeared. Bashes finally came back to his senses, his eyes widened, and his face was full of anger. "What are you looking at? Let's watch Lao Su kill you." Facing those crew members, he roared and roared. Those people were startled one by one, or bowed their heads, or looked at the sky, or turned around. "Anyway, I just didn't dare to look at Bassos. Bosses, how do you feel? This taste is very good." Poison Q looked at him with a weird smile on his face, and laughed. Bassos pointed at him and said angrily, "Poison Q, if you bring this up again in the future, don't blame Lao Su for turning his face. And you, who dares to discuss this matter, I was heard by Lao Su and killed you directly." Lafitte adjusted his top hat and said gently, "Don't worry, how could we discuss this kind of thing? However, you have to pay attention to yourself, don't mess with that little devil again. This is the most important thing." Bassos leaned back in his chair and said something angrily. "Okay, how can I dare to provoke her? I will definitely avoid this devil in the future, I'm really angry." 019. Doflamingo appears. After 1 hour. Report. I found the island in the front left, do you log in? Front left. A siren sounded from the observation deck. Hearing the sound from outside, Perona's face wrinkled, and she said with some dissatisfaction, "This alarm officer's voice is so ugly. Otherwise, do you think it's good to let them taste the negative ghost?" Queen Sweetheart looked at Perona floating in the air and said with a wry smile, "It's almost done, don't make too much effort. Your mischief in the past 2 days has made everyone on the boat tremble, can't you be honest?" Betty glanced at Perona and said lightly, "Don't blame me for not reminding you, I made Chris annoyed, you will suffer." Baccarat waved her hand towards Betty, smiled, and was generous. "Okay, don't scare her. But Perona, you should really restrain yourself, you can't keep playing pranks." Perona fluttered in the air and gave a silver bell-like laughter. "As long as they don't speak ill of this princess, then they won't make fun of them in the future." "That's fine." Baccarat nodded, looked at the busy figure, and said with a smile, "Chris, I feel good luck has arrived." Queen Sweetheart's beautiful eyes lit up, with an excited look on her pretty face, and she said something quickly. "Good luck again, great." Betty shrugged her shoulders, exhaled the smoke from her mouth, and said indifferently, "I'm used to Baccarat's ability." "So good, will there be a new partner?" Perona flew in front of Baccarat, with a look of anticipation on her face, and quickly said, "Is it like Padang? If so, it will be fun. Go out." Chris threw the barbell aside and walked to the door. Queen Sweetheart quickly stood up and said with a big smile, "Let's go, I've been looking forward to it." Betty glanced at Perona behind her and spoke lightly. "Chris can't eat people, are you so afraid of him?" This time, Perona refused to agree, and hurriedly defended, "How could this princess be afraid of him? You think too much. I'm showing respect to the captain." "Respect, don't you understand?" Baccarat stroked her crimson hair and said with a smile, "Yes, you respect Chris very much." In front of him, I didn't dare to speak loudly. It was indeed respectful enough. The group chatted and laughed, and soon came to the deck. When Lafitte saw Chris appear, he showed a polite smile and said happily, "The appearance of the captain means good luck has come again. I hope I can have a gay man this time, and let me see the battle for the squad leader." Poison Q looked at the island in front of him with a curious look on his face. Looking at this situation, it should be a devil fruit, which is more likely. Bassos laughed and said boldly, "Whatever the mother is, it's good luck anyway." At this moment, deep in the island, there was a rumbling sound. Apparently someone was fighting inside. "Looks like someone new is coming." Betty spit out the smoke in her mouth, looked at the lush island, and made a faint sound. The Queen of Sweetheart nodded and said in agreement, "It's okay to be a newcomer, and determine the order of the squad leaders early. It's kind of interesting." Chris has always been decisive and jumped directly to the island. Padang hurriedly jumped down and said with a smile, "Boss, wait for me." Bassos was stunned for a moment, and asked curiously, "What does the captain mean? What does it mean? Somewhat interesting." The captain is domineering, and naturally he sensed something in advance. Lafitte pinned his cane behind him and jumped onto the island lightly. Poison Q looked envious and murmured, "When will I learn to be domineering? It's a really good ability." Then, the group chatted and walked slowly forward. Deep in the island. At this point, there are two men, plus an animal. Foo 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 foo. Brother Doflamming put his hands in the pockets of his trousers, took a figure of 8 steps, and said with a big laugh, "Luo, when you see my young master, don't you know what to call me?" "Young master." Luo looked at him and sneered, "Brother Doflamming, are you dreaming? Whose young master are you?" Doflamingo raised his head and couldn't help laughing. "Foo foo 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 foo. I haven't seen each other for so many years." The little devil in the past has grown up and learned to ridicule his master. Doflamingo's eyes turned cold, and he said in a calm tone, "Do you know who you are talking to, Trafalgar, Row?" "Captain." For Doflamingo, Beppo was very scared. Standing behind Luo, he couldn't help calling out softly, "Of course I do, Doflamingo." Luo looked at the situation around him. His face was as cold as ever, and he said very calmly, "Are you the king of the 7 martial seas, or the big man in the underground world, Joker?" "But, what does this have to do with me? Do you want to use your famous name to make me submit?" "020, if you don't join us, you will die here." "Foo foo 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 foo." Doflamingo laughed loudly, and said with a very arrogant expression, "What a sharp-toothed kid, it seems that you have become a lot more courageous in recent years. How dare you talk to me like that? You are courting death, Luo." 5-color line. The 5 fingers of Doflamingo's right hand were slightly bent, and 5 almost transparent silk threads appeared quietly, which were cut in front of him. Room, slaughterhouse. With Luo as the center, a semicircle appeared, surrounding him and Babo. With a bang, it disappeared instantly before the 5 cutting lines approached. Bang! The cutting line fell to the ground, slashing the ground severely, making an explosion. The dust flew up, and 5 long and deep scratches appeared on the ground, which was shocking to see. If this is not dodged and hit, I am afraid that it will be dismembered immediately. Foo 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 foo. Doflamingo raised his head and laughed, and said with great confidence, "Run away, and enjoy the arrival of death while running away. Rosanity misses you so much in the underground, it's time to go and accompany him, foo 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 tilde tilde." Amidst the loud laughter, he put his hands in his trouser pockets, took 8 figure steps, and slowly walked to the left. Outskirts of the island. There is another sound from inside. It seems that the fight is very intense. The Queen's sweetheart is not afraid at all, with a sweet and delicate smile on her pretty face, and her voice is pleasant to the ear. Betty took a breath and said lightly, "Judging from the sound, the people who want to join this time are only afraid of good strength. Captain, can you tell us in advance whether the new recruits are male or female?" Bossos looked at Chris and couldn't help asking aloud. Poison Q lay on Stallone, coughed and said, "This kind of question. How could the captain answer? You think too much." Chris looked ahead with a calm expression and gave the answer. "It has come." "Come yet?" Hearing Chris say that, everyone hurriedly looked forward. I saw green trees in front of me, covered with flowers and plants, and small animals appeared from time to time. Suddenly, with a swoosh, 2 figures appeared out of thin air. "Captain." Beppo looked anxious and said quickly, "That Doflamingo is really too strong, what should we do?" "Are we going to die here, Captain tilde tilde?" Luo wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked a little tired. This move consumed his physical strength. "Don't worry, we won't die here. I will never die if I don't avenge Corazon." At this moment, a faint voice came from the front. "Of course you won't die because you will be our partner." Chris was in front and the others were behind, appearing in Luo's line of sight. Bossos looked at Luo up and down, shrugged his shoulders and said, "Captain, looking at this guy's strength, it doesn't seem to be very good. In this situation, it looks like he is being hunted down and is fleeing. What kind of strength can he have?" Poison Q showed a mysterious smile with a look of interest. "Talking animals, this is worth studying, he tilde tilde." Lafitte adjusted his top hat and said gently, "You have revealed a problem, he just appeared suddenly. This kind of speed is not something ordinary people can do." Perona flew in the air and let out a silver bell-like laughter. Maimou kept staring at Babo. "Captain, I like this white bear very much, we must make it our partner, Haley ha ha ha." Being watched by so many people, Babo felt embarrassed immediately, lowered his head and blushed like a little girl. "Who are you?" Luo looked around, on high alert, ready to move at any time. Seeing Bebo's cute side, Queen Sweetheart's beautiful eyes lit up, and she said with a sweet smile, "What a funny white bear, so cute." Perona danced in the air, her face full of excitement. "I like it so much, so kawaii, I must make it my pet." Padong also joined in the fun, and said with a smile, "I will have a playmate in the future, and we can go fishing together, he tilde tilde." At this time, Chris made a sound and said something calmly. "Someone who can save you. Follow us and you can get through this danger and even have a chance to avenge your revenge." "Well, think about it carefully." Bashes shrugged his shoulders and said with a big laugh, "You still have to think about it, you will definitely join us. If you don't join, wait for the enemy to come over, and it is estimated that they will be killed, way ha ha ha." Poison Q glanced at Bossos and suggested, "After he joins in, you can start the battle for the squad leader, and you will be the squad leader at that time." Lafitte turned his cane and said politely, "You like watching people fight so much, why haven't you seen you? I think the position of captain of the first team is still the most suitable for you." Hearing their conversation, Luo fell silent. "The situation at hand is very critical, and we must find a way. If you want to leave, maybe you can. But with the Babo oil bottle, there is no need to say more about the result." There is no such physical strength at all. Will definitely be overtaken by Doflamingo. Then, it's not hard to decide. Big guys, Luo is a heavyweight player, so it is understandable that he spends more time on his writing. In the next chapter, the battle begins, and Chris's strength will finally be shown, asterisk.